Akhandamandalakaram vyaptam yena characharam tatpadam darshitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupaswarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakhyam Namami Bhaktashaktikam Namah Pankajanabhaya Namah Pankajamaline Namah Pankajanetraya Namaste Pankajangraye Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Namo Brahmanya Devaya Gobhramana Hitaya Cha Jagadhitaya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Namas Sarvebhyo Sarvesham Krite Swagatam. So, we will all agree that happiness is a goal that is common to all of us, regardless of what kind of activities we do, what kind of career we have. We may be doing business, some of us work for a salary. Whatever we do, ultimately, we seek happiness. So, major field of inquiry in philosophy, in ethics, in general scholarly activity is about what exactly is happiness and where is happiness obtained, or how is happiness obtained? What are the sources of happiness? So as I was reading about this topic, I'm increasingly interested in how the Western world interprets happiness and how they, answer these questions, which I just raised. So I came upon this website, the TED website, the famous TED website. And on this, Chris Anderson, who's currently the head of TED, and he spoke at the 2004 TED conference inaugural address, and he said this. That particular version of the conference was dedicated towards the pursuit of happiness. So all the TED Talks, I think, were oriented towards that topic. So he says, or he said, a few years ago, I stumbled upon a question I found both shocking and exhilarating. Suppose our natural instincts about what we needed to make us happy were dead wrong. That was what the latest scientific research on happiness seemed to suggest. That most of the things we spent our time striving for made almost zero difference to how happy we were. Okay, very, very poignant statement. And then he goes on in the same talk, he says, maybe, just maybe, we could discover a deeper, longer lasting, more profound form of happiness. Maybe we could even do this before we ended up mangling our personal relationships and destroying our planet. Okay, so his talk, as you can see, very heavily loaded. He recognizes that, largely, by and large, the direction in which the world is moving is towards destruction. And destruction of everything, including our relationships, our environment, and maybe the entire earth someday. Right? So he recognizes this, and there have been numerous TED Talks. There's a lot of research going on in this field, including research in management journals, since management scholars are sitting here. So there is research, plenty of papers in management journals pertaining to the question of happiness, because it's very pertinent to all fields of human activity, including managerial activity, right? Regardless of which function of management you talk about, whether the manager is happy, the employees are happy, the customers are happy, it's a very pertinent question. So I wanted to just highlight a couple of major researchers and what they say. This is Martin Seligman. He's considered the pioneer of the field of positive psychology. So in the branch of psychology, in the larger discipline of psychology, there is one branch which is considered probably the most recent among the different branches in psychology. It's called positive psychology, because earlier to this, psychology was largely concerned with the question of, how do you cure patients' mental sickness, depression, people who have mental problems. So what are the source of the mental problem and what is the cure for that? Psychiatry and psychology were very closely intertwined with each other. But At some point of time, people realize that that's a negative question. What is the source of unhappiness? The positive question would be, what is the source of happiness? Instead of just talking about how to cure unhappy people, how to cure depression, you should also ask, how do you make people who are happy happier? People who are not having any problem, is there a way they can become even more happy than they are already happy, right? So this is where positive psychology begins. And he asks the same fundamental question, what are the sources of well-being and happiness? And he's written books. I would encourage you to watch this TED Talk by Martin Seligman and also read some of his articles, papers in management journals he's also published. And he points out a number of sources of happiness and across not only his works, but even the works of other scholars. I've been generally going through, I've not gone into a lot of depth, but in general, the kind of things I have found discussed include, okay, there's one more study by Robert Waldinger. I'll just mention that before I go forward. And Robert Waldinger is at Harvard Medical School, and he is the director of the Harvard Study of Adult Development. This is considered the longest study on happiness. It is 85 years old. The study started about 80 to 85 years back. It's about 85 years now since it started. And the people who started the study are no longer alive, right? You can imagine that 85 years study has gone on. So the study has passed through generations of researchers. From one batch of researchers to the next batch, people have come, done work on this study and gone forward, and the study has just gone through them. And it started with a certain set of subjects, something like 700 odd subjects. And today they have, those subjects that they studied earlier, many of them are no longer alive. So subjects also have changed. And currently they have about 2,000 active subjects in the study whom they are studying. And the question is that what is the source of your happiness? What makes you happy, right? And he finds, I would like you to watch this talk also. This is also a TED Talk, the snapshot I've shown you. And this researcher is well known for his publications, including a very famous book on what he's found in this study. Okay, he's currently the director. Now, very broadly speaking, the sources of happiness that you find in this literature, Western literature, at the most basic level is sensual pleasures, or what they call as just pleasures. Okay, we say sensual pleasure because in the Gita, Indriya Sukham is used. So in our writing, we say sensual pleasure. So they refer to it as hedonic pleasure, hedonic, which comes from the contact of the senses with the sense objects. So here, senses can mean very broadly two categories of senses. One is our gross senses, our senses like our sense of sight, our sense of touch, our sense of smell, our sense of hearing, our sense of tasting, right? For example, good food, tasty food. Okay, now, for example, Diwali just happened and Chhat Puja is going on. So a lot of tasty food is being circulated around, right? And we taste that and we get so much pleasure from it. So that is a sense pleasure, sensual pleasure. Similarly, when we look at something very pleasing, okay, right now, for example, in the Narendra Modi Stadium in Ahmedabad, this match is going on. Okay, the people who are sitting there and watching it, and even the people who are watching it on TV, are experiencing a certain kind of sensual pleasure, which comes from their eyesight, which comes from their sense of hearing, right? And or from the sense of thinking that maybe this team will win or that team will win, etc. It's another form of sensual pleasure, right? So sensual pleasure can range from something connected to sexual pleasure, pleasure from food, pleasure from our eyesight, etc., etc. And there are gross forms of sensual pleasure. Like, for example, the mind is also a sense. Our ego, ahankara, is also a sense, right? So pleasure of the power. I have power in this organization. I am the vice president. I am the president. So many thousands of employees go by what I decide. That kind of pleasure of control, power, reputation. I'm famous. May not have power, but I am famous in society as something, as a celebrity, right? So many millions of people, they adore me. That kind of pleasure. Okay, all that is some form of sensual pleasure, gross pleasure, subtle pleasure, and so on, right? Now, higher than this kind of pleasure, is what Seligman also talks about. He says this is called flow, and flow is a big theory in positive psychology. Positive directed engagement, where when we are absorbed in an activity where sensual pleasure doesn't seem to be our priority, but we do the activity because we love doing the activity. Okay, it could be academic work like reading something, writing something, or it could be sports. Somebody is a runner, somebody is a volleyball player, somebody plays basketball, someone plays tennis. It could be music. Someone plays music, does music. It could be any form of engagement. It could be even a homemaker when she cooks her food. She loves it. She just loves cooking food and she's so absorbed in it that her mind simply doesn't look for any other kind of happiness at that point of time. For 2 hours, she's just cooking in the kitchen and anticipating that the people who's going to eat her food will enjoy her food, what she has cooked. And that thought of fulfillment gives her that happiness of tight engagement, right? This is a higher form of pleasure, okay? And an even higher form of pleasure than this is the sense of having a larger purpose in life, which is beyond oneself or beyond one's immediate connections, one immediate family, or that which gives a sense of success for one's own self or one's own children, one's own wife, one's own family members, something that is for a larger good in society. Okay, so all these points I'm making from what I read in this Western literature. It's all coming from there. So a higher sense of life is about something like, let's say that you work for someone totally unconnected with you. Let's say, for example, somebody does service to cancer patients. Okay, or say Mother Teresa, she did work for lepers. She came to India, she's from some European country, she came here and she gave her whole life for just working for the benefit of those lepers, right? So similarly, somebody else fights for the freedom of this country, which is much larger than their own immediate concerns. And he says that nothing matters to me except that I should ensure that this country becomes free before I die, right? So a higher purpose or meaning in life that is well beyond oneself. And that is said to be an even higher form of happiness. Okay? And even higher than that is when in the talk of, in this particularly this last Harvard study, this Harvard Medical School study, which studied so many people over such a long time, longitudinal study, they found that among all forms of happiness, the highest happiness came from relationships with others, warm connections. They call it warm connections, warm relationships with other people. Okay, and this other people could be anybody. It need not be your spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend. It could be anyone. It could be your sister, your mother, your father, your friends. A meaningful, collaboration with someone where there is a deep understanding between people. And there is the experience of love, is giving love, is somebody that to whom I can give genuine love, is somebody with whom I can, in an uninhibited manner, express myself in a loving manner. I can give anything for them. I'll do anything for them. That kind of feeling. And the feeling that I can ask anything from them in return. I can expect that love in return from them, right? This kind of a understanding. So this is even higher than all the other three forms of love, happiness, which I just spoke about. Now, largely, and of course, there are many finer themes also in the Western literature. It is not just these four things being talked about, but many finer aspects of these things are also spoken about. Now, we ask the question then, how is the Bhagavad-Gita? Because we are studying the Bhagavad-Gita. The Bhagavad-Gita, I have said many times before, is also a book of positive psychology. It's talking about how we can attain happiness, highest form of happiness. So what is it saying that is different from this? And how is it saying that that happiness which it talks about is fundamentally different from these kinds of happiness? Very simple answer to this would be that the Gita very clearly distinguishes between what is called as material pleasure and spiritual bliss. Okay. Now, I would like to put, based on my reading, that the forms of happiness that I just spoke about, that is largely present in the Western literature, is primarily material pleasure. I'll tell you why also. And what the Gita is pointing us towards is spiritual bliss. In Sanskrit, bhautika sukha and adhyatmika sukha or adhyatmika ananda. Ananda as something that is distinct from sukha. The Gita points us towards spiritual bliss, adhyatmika sukha, adhyatmika ananda, whereas largely what we see, all the theories we see in this world is based on material happiness. Okay, I'll distinguish why it is so. Now, material pleasure is that, according to the Gita, is that which comes from engagement with whatever lacks consciousness, matter. Okay, all different forms of matter or material identity. Whereas spiritual bliss or spiritual pleasure comes from engagement with that which has consciousness, the living being. Okay? The Gita in the beginning itself, in the very first teaching to Arjuna, Krishna distinguishes between the Atma and the Deha. Atma versus the Deha. The Atma is the living being, is consciousness. Consciousness is also knowledge. So consciousness, knowledge, Atma are used synonymously in Vedanta. It's not just that the Atma has consciousness. Consciousness is a property of the Atma. That's one way to talk about it. A deeper way to talk about it is the Atma is consciousness. Not merely has consciousness, but the Atma is consciousness. Similarly, the Atma has knowledge is one way to talk about it. But a deeper way to talk about it is Atma is knowledge. Atma eva jnanam. Not Atmanaha jnanam, Atma's knowledge, but Atma itself is knowledge. So the Atma or the living being is actually pure. Pure means by itself, it has no connection with the Jadavastu, this material energy, Bhautika or Bhuta, Panchabhutam. We say Panchamahabhutam, and then there are the subtle Bhutas. So the Atma is pure prajna, it is consciousness. Now, happiness which comes from this recognition, this knowledge, this realization that each of us is an Atma. I am an Atma, and all other living beings are an Atma just like me, very similar to me. Whether it's the body of a human being that they have, or the body of an animal, or the body of a plant, or the body of a virus, it doesn't matter. All Jivatma is just like me. Is consciousness, pure consciousness. Number one. Number two, the Gita says that encompassing this consciousness is something called as the Paramatma, which is the universal consciousness, or the cosmic consciousness, Krishna. In the Bhagavad-Gita, in the 9th chapter, for example, we read, he says, Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina matsthani sarva bhutani nameteshvavastitaha. So everything in this universe is pervaded by me. Everything is pervaded by me. That's why the term Vishnu comes. Vishnu means that which pervades everything, whose consciousness is present everywhere. Okay, the Jivatma's consciousness is present in a limited and localized manner. For example, we are conscious of our body, and we are conscious of wherever our senses make contact with. For example, my eyesight now is making contact with all of you. So I'm conscious of your presence in this room. Similarly, you are conscious of my presence in this room, right? But I'm not conscious of what is present outside this room. But that's not the case with Paramatma. The Paramatma's consciousness spreads everywhere. He's conscious of everything. At the same time, namete shavastitaha. I am not present in any of them, he says. What does he mean? He means that he is completely detached from everything. There is presence with detachment from everything. Right? So spiritual bliss or adhyatmika sukha is what the Bhagavad-Gita teaches about. It's pointing towards that. It says, it explicitly advises us that now detach yourself from sensual pleasure. All these lives, including this particular life that you're living, you have experienced sensual pleasure. You know very well what it is. And you've been hankering for that pleasure. You've been hankering for the pleasure of the five senses, like food or even sexual pleasure. You've also been hankering for things like fame, name, prestige, all those things. Now, these are all inferior to what you are capable of experiencing. You as the Jivatma are capable of experiencing a much higher pleasure. And that is when you realize yourself. That's called Atma Avalokanam. Baladi Vidyabhushana uses the term Atma Avalokanam, means seeing the self or realizing the self. When we realize the self, we experience a happiness which goes beyond this material happiness, including all the four forms of happiness which I just spoke about, which came from the Western literature. Okay. Now, here, the Gita goes one step further. Beyond even self-realization is the realization of Bhagavan. Understanding that there is a relationship between Bhagavan and me. And this actually becomes very interesting when you compare with some of the realizations of Western literature, especially the Harvard Medical School study, which says that the ultimate form of happiness in this world comes from relationships, warm relationships. Of course, There too, although they are talking about relationship with other living beings, which is jivatmas, still it happens without the understanding of the jivatma as present in all the living beings, or jivatma as the living being in all the bodies that we see. It's without that realization. It is still based on material identity. And that is why I distinguish it from spiritual happiness. For spiritual happiness to be realized or experienced, it has to come with the understanding that we are the jivatma, we are not matter, we are different from matter. Otherwise, like the Harvard Business School, Harvard Medical School study found, the happiness of a relationship in this world is material relationship. So after all, for example, you say my son, my friend, so and so. For example, you may look at me and say Ajit Kumar. Now, who is Ajit Kumar? It's not this jivatma. It's actually this body, right? This body remains Ajit Kumar till it dies. And then it remains a photograph or something, right? After that, where is the Atma? That is me. The real me is not here. It is somewhere else or in some other body, right? And in that body, somebody will give it a different name. The parents of that body will give it some other name. And it will be known by that name. And therefore, any relationship that you had with that person called Ajit Kumar is only a material relationship. It is not a spiritual relationship unless this realization was there that actually we are all jivatmas. We are all spiritual. We are beyond this body. When the relationship is based on that, then it becomes a spiritual relationship. And the ethics which guides that relationship, that becomes spiritual ethics. So I use the word ethics to mean what ethics means, right or wrong. The sense of what is right and what is wrong, morality, right? So all morality that is existing in this world today, that we are taught in our schools, in our college, and what we learn in business ethics in a B school, is all based on material understanding of material identities, sense of pleasure, happiness, priorities, etc., right and wrong. The Gita gives us an ethics which is based on spiritual understanding. It's based on the Atma. That's why the Gita's ethics, you can see, clearly has a distinction from the ethics of right and wrong that's described in the normal Western literature, as we understand it. Okay. Now, the common thing that the word relationship comes in both. And so what is the relationship that we are speaking about here in the Bhagavad-Gita? The relationship that we are speaking about is the eternal relationship that we have. One is the relationship to ourselves, the eternal nature of that existence. The Atma, right in the beginning of the Gita, Krishna makes it very clear that the Atma is eternal, it's Nitya. It has no death. Na sato vidyate bhavaha, na bhavo vidyate sataha. He says that which is Sat has no non-existence, and that which is Asat has no existence. That's the definition of Sat and Asat, and the Atma is Sat. It is eternally existent. So that realization is the first step towards that relationship, that eternal relationship, the relationship with our own self as being eternal, eternally existing. And much higher than that realization is the realization of that eternal bond that we have with Bhagavan, who is the cosmic consciousness, that universal personality who subsumes all other personalities. All jivatmas are present in him, and he's present in all the jivatmas as the unifying factor. He's that unifying factor. So when we realize that relationship, then it becomes perfection of happiness, the highest form of happiness. And that is what in the Gita, we've already seen to 25 shlokas. In the 22nd shloka was this. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janah paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. This, as we discussed in the last session, is a statement of love that Sri Bhagavan makes. He makes a very bold declaration. He says that those who are connected with me exclusively, ananya bhakti, ananyas chintayanta, those who are always thinking about me in that relationship, and who are endeavoring, who are working hard, who are practicing to attain me, to get that bonding, to realize that bond with me, I personally, I carry that responsibility to provide what they lack. Something that they don't have, I take care of that. They don't have to worry about it. And I preserve what they already have. I protect them and I preserve what they already have. Okay, this Sri Bhagavan points out, and this is one of the core shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, where it highlights the essence of this relationship. Of course, this whole idea is repeated many times in the Gita. Again, in the 10th chapter, we'll see shlokas where he talks about that love between him and his bhaktas. So going forward from here, after the 25th shloka, the 26th shloka of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyupahritam ashnami prayatatmanaha. So he says patram. Patram means in Sanskrit a leaf. Pushpam, flower. Phalam, a fruit. Toyam, water. Toyam means water in Sanskrit. Yo me bhaktya prayachati. One who gives this to me with bhakti. Bhaktya means with bhakti. Bhaktya prayachati. One who gives this to me with bhakti. Right? Tadaham, that I. Bhakti upahritam. That which is loaded with bhakti. Bhakti upahritam means that which is covered with bhakti. That offering is not just a material item. Along with that item is that bhav of bhakti which is coming from that person who is offering it. Ashnami prayatatmanaha. That I eat. Ashnami means I eat. Literally means I eat or I accept. Prayata atmanaha. One who is sincere, one who is endeavoring. It's called a prayata atmanaha. One who is engaged completely in thinking about me. Such a person. Of such a person, when he makes that offering, I accept. The point he is trying to say, it's not that I am looking for a leaf or a fruit or a flower. I am looking for that bhakti. That bhakti is what I am craving for. Okay, so if Bhagavan is craving for anything, it is nothing material. It is always that bond he has with his other jivatmas. Okay, so the point being made in the shloka, like I said, I wrote in my abstract also when I sent you the email, is that there is nothing that is short in Bhagavan. There is nothing lacking in him. Right? So it's not about particular items that make him happy. Like the misconception in society sometimes is that, like for example, there are people who would go to a temple, like for example in Tirupati. Okay, a businessman goes and he makes a pledge in front of Bhagavan. The pledge is that, oh Bhagavan, you are the source of everything. Everything comes from you. So in this year, if my business crosses 10 crores, I'll give you 2 crores. So essentially, what is this person doing? He's striking a deal with Bhagavan, right? He's coming into a he's basically working out a contract. He's striking a deal with Bhagavan, isn't it? Ultimately, in simple terms, it's that. It looks like a lot of bhakti, but actually it's a deal. It's a business deal expressed with a covering of what looks like bhakti. So, and it happens. In many cases, it happens. And that is why, probably that could be one of the reasons why Tirupati is the richest temple in the world, right? People sometimes find, not very occasionally, but quite often, huge amounts of money dropped into the hundi. If you see the hundi in Tirupati temple, it's huge. It's not like the small boxes you see in many other temples. Huge hundi. And not just one, many of them. Everywhere they are there. So people can go and people drop it anonymously. They don't want to be known. Okay, for whatever reasons. Just go and drop it. Find wads and wads of notes amounting to crores. You'll find jewels, big jewelry being dropped into that hundi. Right? It's working out. Bhagavan responds, okay, at least in that way you're connecting with me. I'm okay with it. It's not because I want that. There's nothing, everything anyway belongs to me. I already have it. But at least in that way you feel some connection with me. So I'll give you a chance to connect with me. Right? Artho, Jigyasur, Artharthi. Artharthi also is one of the 4. He says in the 7th chapter. 4 types of people come to me. Artha, one who is in distress. Jigyasu, one who is very curious and inquisitive about knowing about reality. Artharthi, one who is desiring material gains, material returns. And Jnani, the one who knows the truth. 4 types of people come to me. So he's not looking for any of those things in particular. He's happy with that bhakti. That gives him a lot of happiness. And what is meant by bhakti? Bhakti is, like I have said earlier also, is ekata anukulata. Anukulyena Krishna anushilana. This oneness with Bhagavan that we feel that actually I'm a part of him. He belongs to me. I belong to him. That feeling of oneness. That is the basis for all forms of love, actually. If we have to even talk about material love, like we spoke about in the Harvard Medical School study, talking about relationship with another human being, right? Even that love, if that love has to be genuine and authentic, then you have to feel that oneness with that person, that person understands me. He can empathize with me. He can feel what I am feeling, right? Only then you feel love. Otherwise, it is just transactional love, right? whether it is sensual love or it's even just relationship, a general relationship with somebody you're working with. You have a respectful relationship, but it doesn't go beyond a certain point, because you can't confide everything with that person. You can only confide some things with that person. But when you can confide everything about yourself with somebody, that means you're feeling a lot of connection with that person. You're feeling oneness, ekata with that person. And that is what we need to feel with Bhagavan, that I can confide anything with him. That is called ekata. And the other aspect, this ekata is considered as the swarup lakshana of bhakti. It's the core of bhakti, the core lakshana of bhakti. And the tatastha lakshana of bhakti, or what is called as the accompanying factor, which is what comes out in our behavior, is called anukulata. Anukulata is acting or doing things in a manner that is pleasing to him, that which gives him happiness, that which makes him feel good, acha lagta hai. When he sees our behavior in some manner, he feels, this person I like. I like the way this guy moves around in society. I like the way this person thinks. I like even something very gross, like I like the way this person arranges his room. He's so clean. He's so neat. He's so systematic. When Sri Bhagavan sees those things, he likes it in that person. That is why in a temple, we say the temple must be kept very clean. It's not merely for us, it's because Bhagavan likes it. And that's where bhakti comes. That he will like it if his temple is kept very clean. Everything is washed. Everything is spick and span. Right? And people, when they go to a temple, they are clean. When we are clean, it's not only for us, but it's because it gives him so much happiness when we are clean. And that is where it becomes bhakti. It becomes bhakti when we think that it is pleasing to him, not merely what we get in return by doing this. Okay? So this shloka says, when one offers me a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water with bhakti, I accept the bhakti-endowed offering of that pure-hearted person. So prayata atmanaha indirectly means, literally it means one who is very sincerely endeavoring to obtain me. And by implication, it means somebody who is very pure, very sincere, very sincerely endeavoring, such a person. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti upahritam ashnami prayatatmanaha yat karoshi yadashnasi yadjuhoshi dadasi yat yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. So now he's generalizing that principle. So he spoke about very specific things, food items offered to him. But now he says, whatever you do, yat karoshi, yat ashnasi, whatever you eat, yat juhoshi, whatever tapasya you perform, whatever sacrifices you perform. Juhoshi means yajna, that you do. Dadasi yat, what you give in charity, dan, what you give to others in charity. Charity or dan is a big thing in our traditional society, giving to others. Today, we don't do so much of it, at least consciously we don't do. When somebody asks us, somebody from some place comes and says, I'm doing something for orphanage, or I'm doing something for patients or something, please give me some money, then we may give. Okay? But earlier, even if nobody asked you, you would go out of your way and give, because charity was considered as a important virtuous activity. Giving to others was considered very virtuous. Yet tapasyasi kaunteya. Tapasyasi means doing tapasya. Like, for example, Ekadashi, we do fast on Ekadashi day, or fast on, like today, Chhat Puja is going on. A lot of people, millions of people are fasting today for Chhat Puja. So tapasya, different types of tapasya are done in our Shastra. Tapasya is very purifying. Yat tapasyasi kaunteya tat kurushva madarpanam. Do it as an offering to me. So this is an element of bhakti. And here, there's a very fine difference between how bhakti yoga and karma yoga. In the Gita, actually, very broadly speaking, two paths of yoga are spoken about. One is the path of karma plus jnana yoga. That is one path, karma yoga in the initial stages, jnana yoga in the later stages. And the other dominant path, which contrasts with karma plus jnana, is the path of bhakti yoga. And bhakti yoga is what Sri Bhagavan eventually advocates in the Bhagavad-gi. He concludes with saying that bhakti is what I want you to follow, not the other path. Although he also talks about the other path in a lot of detail. Right? So now what are some of the characteristic differences between them? I'll talk about one of them here because it comes to this shloka. Because this shloka can be interpreted by some people from the perspective of karma yoga as well. Right? Although here it's talked about in the context of bhakti yoga. So he says, Tat Kurushva Madarpanam, do it as an offering to me. Now in Karma Yoga, how Karma Yoga works, as is described in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. The third chapter of Bhagavad Gita is all about Karma Yoga. All the essential principles of Karma Yoga are described there. So there, Karma Yoga involves doing your duties sincerely with detachment. Detachment means you're not attached to the fruits of those activities. The motivation for doing those activities does not come from the results those activities will deliver to you. Okay, for example, let's say you're working hard for your academics now. You're sincere, you're doing work. But if your mind is all the time thinking that by all this hard work, I will get a CQPI above 7 on a scale of 8. Okay, then your motivation for that hard work is coming from that thought of that CQPI and all the associated rewards that you will get. You will, for example, be one of the toppers of the batch. Your CQPI is above 7. You will be given a medal in the convocation. You will get enormous amount of fame. Your photograph will come in some of the institute's magazines. People will praise you. A lot of people will want to take selfies with you as the topper of the batch. Right? These are the fruits of that hard work. So if the motivation for doing that hard work is coming from that fruit, thinking that I will enjoy these things by the end of my hard work, then it is working with attachment. Attachment to the fruits. Attachment means attachment to the fruits of the work. Okay, then what is meant by detachment from the fruits of the work? If somebody says, then why will you work if you are not motivated by something like that? Or if somebody else could say, okay, I'm not motivated by the prize I'll get in my convocation, but I'm motivated by the placement I will get. If I get a high CQPI, then my chances of getting a good placement are higher. At least he thinks so. Actually, it's not, but he may think like that. And he may work very hard, thinking that now McKinsey will give me a placement. PCG will give me a placement if I get a high CQPI, right? That also is the same. It's a different form of attachment, attachment to something different from what the other person was attached. So now if you can ask the question, if somebody is not attached to any of these fruits, then why would they at all want to work? There has to be some goal to work for. There has to be some end, what you get from that, right? So this kind of thinking about the fruit that you will get and the happiness that the fruit will produce, and then driving yourself to work hard, is called instrumental thinking, or it's called instrumental happiness in the Western literature. Western literature calls this instrumental happiness, where the work is seen as the instrument to that form of happiness, the fruit that comes from it. And the Gita covers this, or Vedanta philosophy covers this by saying that we reject it. We're not looking at work as an instrument for happiness. Work itself is happiness. Why? Because it is done as a matter of duty. Okay. So if work is done as a matter of duty, then why should it motivate me? It motivates me because I'm conscious about, that's why it's called yoga. Karma yoga is different from sakama karma. Sakama karma is instrumental happiness or instrumental work. But work, when it's done with the higher perspective of knowledge of the Atma, when you realize, when you have the motivation or when you have the realization or at least the theoretical knowledge, not the spiritual realization, the theoretical knowledge that there is something higher than all of this happiness. The Jivatma, me as the Jivatma, I'm entitled to that pure happiness. The pure happiness which is even beyond the happiness of Sattva. Okay, the happiness of Sattva is the highest form of happiness we can experience in the material existence. But even higher than that is the happiness of Vishuddha Sattva, the happiness of Nirgunatva. So when there is a knowledge, there is a direction from the Guru or from Shastra or from one's parents or from wherever, that there is this kind of happiness available if I'm able to work as a matter of duty. It is my duty. For example, in the traditional Varnashrama system, I'm a Brahmana. As a Brahmana, I have certain duties to perform. Yajana, Yajana, Dana, Parigrahana. So all these are my duties as a Brahmana. Right? Yajana, Yajana, Patana, Patana, Dana, Parigrahana. These are said to be 6 major duties of a Brahmana. Similarly, Kshatriya. A Kshatriya has duties of protecting others, administration in society, ensuring that all the different Varnas are doing what they are supposed to do and they are safe, they are well protected. All the provisions required for them are given. They have land, They have the cows, they have crops they have enough to cultivate, their crops, and there are markets are functioning. This is the job of the Kshatriya to ensure that all of this is provided for. Like the job of today's, you can say, politicians. It's supposed to be that. Similarly, the Vaishyas, they have their duties. The Shudras have their duties. So if a person does their duty, thinking that this is my duty as a Brahmana, I do this. I'm supposed to do this. If I do this, this will open the road for me for getting that highest form of happiness. I don't care about the punya which comes. As a Brahmana, if I do my duty, I'll get punya, but I don't want that punya. I sacrifice that punya. And this is where madarpanam comes. At the end of doing one's duties in karma yoga, at the end of it, one says, one goes to Bhagavan and says that I don't want the punya that is entitled to me because I did my duties. I have done all my duties sincerely. Please forgive me if I have made any mistakes. Shamaswatvam, Shamaswatvam. Please forgive me. And whatever punya I have got in this, Sarvam Krishna Arpanamastu. Let everything go to Krishna. This is explained in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad-Gita. He says, do all your duties and offer all the results to me. And that way, by doing this again and again, you will develop detachment. This is the process for developing detachment in Karma Yoga. By doing this, you will then realize that actually you're not getting any more punya because you're offering it to Bhagavan. Bhagavan is taking away that punya also. He's not only taking away the pap, he's also taking away the punya from you. Then what are you left with? Neither pap nor punya. But you are now spiritually elevated. You're left with spiritual elevation. Arohanam. Okay, in the 6th chapter, he comes to that point. He says that in the beginning of the path of Karma Yoga, doing your work is the means to elevation. And after you have reached to a certain level, coming away from your work, staying away from work if you want to, that is the means. Okay, so the Karma Yoga process, in summary, is about doing your duties sincerely with detachment and offering all the results that you get to Sri Bhagavan and saying, I don't want any happiness from that result itself. I will take what is required to maintain myself. I have to maintain this body. I have to remain healthy, hygienic. Otherwise, I won't be able to do anything. So minimum, what is required for that, I will take. And all the other things I'll offer to Bhagavan. Let him take it away from me. It's for society. Okay, so how is Bhakti Yoga different from this? Now, in Karma Yoga, this relationship with Bhagavan is not there. Bhagavan is a sink. He acts like a sink in the sense he is an authority to whom you offer your results and who governs your progress in spiritual life. That's all. There's no feeling of I belong to Bhagavan, he belongs to me, and my life is for the pleasure of Bhagavan. It's not only about not wanting papa and punya, it's about wanting the pleasure of Bhagavan, which is not present in Karma Yoga. In Karma Yoga, the Karma Yogi will not consciously think that all I am doing is for the pleasure of him. I will choose activity which pleases him. I will reject any activity which does not please him. This thinking is not present in Karma Yoga. In Karma Yoga, the thinking is, I am a student, I'm supposed to study. I am a Brahmana, I'm supposed to do this. I am a Kshatriya, I'm supposed to do this. I am a carpenter, I'm supposed to do this. Okay, as a matter of duty. In Bhakti Yoga, let me seek out what is pleasing to him. Okay, I've been put as a student. Now, if I do my activities as a student very well, he will be very happy. He will like it. It gives him happiness. But this thinking that this gives him happiness is the distinguishing point of departure from Karma Yoga for Bhakti Yoga. Conscious awareness about Bhagavan's presence in one's life and building one's life around his pleasure, what makes him happy, right? So this then, therefore, because it thinks about Bhagavan, and because the Bhakti Yogi is aware that everything is Bhagavan, so the Bhakti Yogi's conduct in society becomes very pleasing to others as well. When the Bhakti Yogi moves about in society, he takes care to ensure that nobody is offended. He's very sensitive. Nobody feels hurt. But everybody is treated appropriately. Okay. Sometimes, for example, if there is a thief who comes and shows you a knife, then you can't say, I'll act in a way that will please the thief. Appropriately. Act appropriately, according to the situation and the context. The Bhakti Yogi becomes very sensitive to that. Okay. And therefore he says, Yat karoshi yad ashnashi. Yat karoshi yad ashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva madarpanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever oblations you make in a fire sacrifice, whatever you give in charity, and whatever austerities you perform, O Kaunteya, do them as offerings to me. And this shloka is situated in the context of Bhakti Yoga in the 9th chapter. But like Vishwanath Chakravarti also points out in his commentary, Sarartha Varshini, he says that this can also be interpreted in the Karma Yoga sense as something that is done after the work is over. In Karma Yoga, the offering to Bhagavan is made after the work is over. After you do the activity, you say, let the fruits of this activity go to you, Bhagavan, I don't want them. In Bhakti Yoga, the offering is done in the activity itself. Means it's not done after the activity is over. The activity itself is an offering to Bhagavan. You see, there's a very fine difference between the two. Before the activity begins itself, you say that, let me offer this activity to Bhagavan, not just the fruits of the activity. So there is a distinction between them. And then Sri Bhagavan goes on to summarize these 3 shlokas. He says, Shubha Shubha Phalairevam Mokshase Karma Bandhanaihi Sanyasa Yoga Yuktatma Vimukto Mam Upaishyasi. So he says, Shubha Ashubha Phalaihi Evam. He says, living like this. So earlier he said, Ananyas Chintayanto Mam. And now in the last 2 shloka he said, whatever you do, you offer to me. Offer me a leaf, a fruit, a flower, water, etc. Then all activities of this type, that type, everything you offer to me. Then he says, if you live like this, if this becomes your life, Shubha and Ashubha, Phalaihi, both the good things, desirable things, as well as the undesirable things, from a material perspective. Desirable things from a material perspective are things like punya, and the fruits of punya like material happiness, sensual happiness, wealth, a lot of material wealth, the hankering for that wealth. Undesirable things are painful things, whatever causes us pain, physical, bodily pain, mental pain, stress, depression, all kinds of mental pain. Both desirable things and undesirable things, Shubha, Ashubha, both of them, moksha say, you will become free from both of them. You will become liberated from both of them. Karma bandhanaihi, because these are actually karma bandhana. These are actually bonding. So you may think, or many people may think, because the majority of the Veda also talks about that doing good things and earning punya should be the goal of life, dharma. But here he is pointing out the Bhagavad-Gita goes beyond the Veda. It rejects the rest of the Veda. Rejects in the sense, not that it condemns. It respects Veda, but it goes beyond it. In that sense, it rejects. Goes beyond the Veda and says, don't follow what the Veda is saying, because it's a lower kind of dharma, samanya dharma. Reject punya also, because it's bonding, karma bandhanahi. It bonds you or it binds you to this material existence. Punya is also binding, just like papa is binding, punya is also binding. Sannyasa yoga yuktatma, become a sannyasa yoga yuktatma. Sannyasa means one who has given up. Sati nyasa, sannyasa. That's how the word is expanded. Sati nyasa. Sati means placing in sat. Nyasa means placing. Placing in sat. So placing your consciousness in the eternal thing. Sat is the eternal vastu, sad vastu. Placing your consciousness in that which is eternal, the Atma, the Jivatma, the self, the Paramatma. Sannyasa yoga, being in this kind of yoga, connecting with the eternal thing, Yuktatma, Vimuktaha, you will become liberated from, you will become free from this bonding with karma, all forms of karma. Mam upaishyasi, and you will attain me. You will be able to reach me. In this manner, you will be freed from the desirable punya as well as the undesirable papa, fruits of your activities, and thereby from the material bondage created by your activities. With a mind that has been purified by sacrificing the fruits of your activities and liberated from bondage, you will attain me. So, in these 3 shlokas, essentially, Sri Bhagavan adds to the earlier points on bhakti that he had made in the 9th chapter. The 9th chapter is about ananya bhakti. The culmination of that we saw in the Ananyas Chintayanto shloka. And then he adds to further reinforce the same thinking. And after this, there are 6 more shlokas left in the 9th chapter. The ninth chapter has 34 shlokas in all. So there are 6 more shlokas, which we will cover in the next session. And in those shlokas, Sri Bhagavan essentially ties up all the 28 shlokas he has done. He ties them up and he answers further questions on what can concern Arjuna from Arjuna's perspective and from our perspective as well. Because we are just like Arjuna, like we are pretty much confused about reality. We don't know what is right, what is wrong. Like Arjuna was in the beginning of the Kurukshetra war, doesn't know whether I should fight the war or not. He has come all the way prepared. Everything has been discussed. He himself went to Krishna and he said, please give me yourself. Krishna said, I'll give you either myself or I'll give you my army. Which one do you want? Duryodhana chose the army. Arjuna extremely happy, got Krishna. All that has happened. But when on the day on which he has to fight, the conch shell has been blown, and now he says, I don't want to fight. It's forgotten his purpose, right? So we are just like that. Very often we come across, nodal points in our life. We don't know what exactly is the purpose of life. What are we doing? For example, even a simple thing like, am I choosing the right path in my career? This is a question which comes to us many times in life, right? Many times. So this kind of confusion is common to all living beings. Okay, all living beings who can think even a little bit. Okay? For very few people will say that I'm perfectly happy the way I am. There are a few people like that who are very content, but a majority of the people are confused, are thinking about what is the next thing? Where should I go from here? Am I doing the right thing? What is the next thing I'll get from this? And so Sri Bhagavan gives us direction in the Bhagavad-Gita. The Bhagavad-Gita is a book of direction where he points to himself and he says, if you make me the center of your life and revolve all your morality around me, all your sense of right and wrong about what I am saying, then you'll be very happy. You'll have a perfect direction in life. And at the end of your life, you will attain me. Mam upaishyasi. So with this, I will stop for today's class and I'll be happy to hear your questions, comments, or anything that you have to say. Yeah. Govardhan Leela. Yes. Yeah. Well, in that same Leela, Indra comes as the father of Arjuna, right? He's not there directly himself. But okay, her question for those who are online is that at the beginning of Krishna Leela, when the devatas go and pray to him and he says that I will come, I will take birth and I will remove the evil in society. He also asks all the devas to take birth and prepare for his arrival. So the devas take birth on this earth, right? In different forms, in different households, they appear as saintly people or as something or the other. So in Govardhan Leela, we heard about Indra playing, mischief for doing something nasty to Krishna, trying to do something nasty to Krishna and to Vrindavan. So how come Indra was left out of this crowd? I don't know. Do any of you have an answer whether Indra was deliberately asked to stay out so that he can do this, or Indra did not do it? Something. I don't know. I really don't have a technical answer to this. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yes. 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 So this Krishna Lila occurred in the previous, the Krishna Lila described in the Bhagavatam was not this particular one of this, not only this Manvantara, but not even this Kalpa, previous Kalpa, or some other earlier Kalpa. So, but even then, it's called Anupurvi. The same kind of events repeat themselves. So what is described in the same Bhagavatam, which is describing an earlier Kalpa, is that Bhagavan asks the Devas to take birth before him. This Parikshit, yeah. So the Parikshits are different. Mahabharata Parikshit is different from the Bhagavatam Parikshit. That's the understanding. Yeah, but what she's asking is the same incident in which Indra came and did this. In the same story, earlier, Krishna asks all the devas to take birth. It's not the devas to take birth is not in a different kalpa, in the same kalpa. The same appearance of Krishna, both things have happened. So her question is very relevant. Did you understand? By talking about different kalpas, you can't answer that question. Even if they're not, Bhagavatam is talking about everything from the same kalpa. Both the devas to take birth and Indra doing that lila is both in the same kalpa. Saraswata kalpa. No. See, ultimately, even Brahma is thinking like that, and Indra is thinking in this manner. Yeah. Yeah, that incident, yes, where Brahma sees many other Brahmas, yes. Maybe it is, but I don't know for sure that it is. So, but one thing we can understand is that maybe for the sake of this particular Leela, Indra did not take birth among the different devas who took birth. There are so many devatas, right? Divine personalities. So when we say devata, we don't mean only the prominent devas that are worshipped, like Indra, Surya, etc. But millions of other living beings who live in Swargaloka, whose names are not known to us. They're all devas who live there, punyatmas who have gone there. So they take birth at these times. They are given that instruction. Yeah, they get that fortune of being a part of Bhagavan's Leela because they have that punya. They have earned that punya to be associated with Bhagavan, at least in this manner. Even if they are not ready for mukti, they're still materially absorbed in their sattvic sukha. And maybe in this particular Leela, Indra does not take birth. Krishna keeps him. And we must understand that whenever Krishna performs a Leela, when Bhagavan performs a Leela, it is Yogamaya who arranges the Leela. So even Indra's doing this is not entirely free from, it's not entirely his free choice. Like, for example, if I were to do something, it's entirely driven by my karma and my vasanas. Okay, so here, it's Indra's vasanas being, not perfect. He has that abhiman, he has arrogance, he has stamba. Stamba means pride, arrogance. And Krishna wants to lower that. Krishna wants to remove that and purify him. But he selects him, and that's his kripa. He picks him up from there. And then he makes him do that. He inspires him from the heart to come and do this thing on Vrindavan, to attack Vrindavan with his clouds. That is his kripa. Through that Leela, he shows him that. Right? So in that sense, we can probably think of it as a larger plan of Bhagavan, that he was not made to take birth along with the other devas. He was kept there itself. Similarly, Brahma. He appears as the father of Arjuna, though. He is the father of Arjuna, right? He is the one that Kunti has a union with when Arjuna is produced. Yeah.
We did not mention about multiple headed brahmas. We talked about only one.
That's a different Leela he's referring to. It comes elsewhere in the Bhagavatam. Maybe in some other class, I will touch upon that Leela where once Brahma goes to see Bhagavan, I think in Dwaraka, he's made to wait. And he's wondering why he's asked to wait. And then he gets a messenger, comes from inside and asks, which Brahma are you? So he is surprised with that question because he says, I know of only one Brahma, that is me. Because there's only one universe. And in this universe, there's one Brahma, that's me. I am the only Brahma here. And I'm the one who's doing all the job of creation, destruction, everything. So what does this question really mean? So he sends back the message that tell him that I am the Brahma of this universe. I am the Brahma, the only Brahma. Then when he goes inside, he's allowed to go inside. And he goes and when he offers his, even before he offers his respect to Bhagavan, he sees a lot of other entities who are also Brahmas. And they are Brahmas with different numbers of heads. So he's a four-headed Brahma. He sees Brahmas with other numbers of heads. And they're all offering their pranam at the feet of Krishna. Dwaraka. Krishna is the king of Dwaraka, right? And they're all offering their stuti. They're offering stuti. They're all offering their respects, and they're all clashing. Their crowns are clashing with each other. They're all competing to get space to offer their thing. And then he realizes that this universe in which I am Brahma is not the only universe in existence. That there are millions of universes. And each of them has one Brahma in it. And all these universes come from the body of Mahavishnu. Okay, he is beyond the universe. He is beyond material existence. As Mahavishnu and Vaikuntha. And these come out of him and they go into him. So when he sees that, then his misconception goes away. He's put in place. His understanding is put in the proper place. Of course, here too, we should not talk about Brahma like an ordinary person, like the way we talk about an ordinary person. He's a very, very, very elevated entity. And in this universe, he's the most elevated person, right? Spiritually, the most elevated person. So these are all leelas of Bhagavan by which he shows us. Through Brahma, he's showing us a glimpse of reality. Gives us a glimpse of reality.
Sir,
Yeah, Gaurav. Yeah. 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 Yes. Yes. Yeah. 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 There's no need for remuneration. Innovation. Innovation in what sense? In material sense of innovation? Yes, there can be material innovation. Like people may find new ways of building a house according to requirement.
sir, in particular, try to maximize some utility.
Yeah.
Utility
Yeah. Yeah. Utility is about returns. Yes. It's about return. Yeah.
assigned to doing any work outside.
Hmm.
In that case, they would not be.
In spiritual existence, the dominating force is called Seva Bhav, the Hladini Shakti, Bhagavan. The Seva Bhav is the mentality of how can I give more pleasure to Sri Bhagavan? And when you say Sri Bhagavan, it includes all other living beings. So each living being always thinks about what is pleasing to the others. How can I be engaged in what is pleasing to the others? So innovation is about change, right? Innovation is all about, innovation comes from creativity. Creativity is like a fuel for innovation. So now creativity, innovation are essentially about change. In this material world, they are driven by problems. A problem situation makes opens the need for innovation, creativity. If there were no problems, then the motivation for innovation would probably be non-existent. When I say problem, I even include the problem faced by a person who has everything, but who in his mind feels that I still need more. For him, that's a problem, right? So he wants to innovate. He wants to buy, for example, this sofa. I already had this sofa for the last 2 years. I'm fed up of this sofa. I want a new sofa. Whereas a poor man is not even having a roof on his head. This guy is thinking of changing his sofa from one luxurious sofa to another luxurious sofa. So there's a problem in the material world. And problems drive innovation. In the spiritual world, this kind of lacuna is not felt. There's always happiness. And there is this mentality of looking for more and more ways to serve, enhance my service. There is the atripti of seva bhav. Seva bhav, one of its properties is the property of atripti, the feeling that I am not doing enough. I should do even better seva than this. So this drives innovation. So I'm coming to the answer of innovation. In spiritual world, innovation comes from this thinking that my seva should become better, because I'm always lacking in the way in which I am making happiness for others. Okay.
Getting happiness also.
Material happiness. In spiritual world, we're removing material happiness as the utility. Material happiness is happiness derived from our senses or from our ego or from the pleasures felt by the mind. Yeah. Yeah. If all this happens without the understanding of myself being a jivatma and all living beings being jivatmas, without that spiritual realization, then it is material happiness. For something to be called spiritual happiness, it should draw itself from this fundamental platform of recognition of one's spiritual identity as different from this body. Otherwise, even the best form of love in this material world, of which trust is a part, trust is a component of love, right? Authentic love in this material world is based on things like trust. Trust is one element of that love. Even that is material only, however pure it is, however authentic it is. Yes, when you're doing it with knowledge, the knowledge that both he and I, the object of my offering, that is Bhagavan, and myself, the offerer, both are not of this material existence. Both of us are spiritual. Both of us are Atma. We are both Atma. When we have that knowledge, we're doing it with that knowledge and with the motivation to convert that knowledge, theoretical knowledge, into a realization. Bhakti Yoga is about the process of converting theoretical knowledge about the Atma into practical realization of the Atma. Do you follow? When it is done like that, then it becomes spiritual. There has to be spiritual expectation. So even spiritual progress is driven by akanksha. Akanksha is present in both, hankering. There is hankering for that spiritual perfection, spiritual knowledge. There is a desire. So when we use the word desire, we have to be careful about how we are using it. By default, desire means material desire. Desire for something material in return, even if it is that love that we experience in this world. But in the context of spirituality also, in the context of the realization of the Atma also, there is the word desire used, akanksha or asha. And that akanksha refers to that hankering for spiritual realization, that love, that pure love, which is beyond material identity. In that love, there is no question of friend or enemy, because everything is jivatma. So the person who insults me and hurts me, and the person who loves me very much, the authentic love person, and the authentic hate person who hates me authentically and the person who loves me authentically, both become equal in my eyes. That is spiritual realization. Because at that stage, you realize that actually everybody is an Atma, Jivatma. The body is different, their karmas are different, their vasana is different, which is all material. And it's because of that one person hates me, one person loves me. It's very temporary. The temporariness of that material thing. For example, the person who hates me now, in the next life, that person may be my mother or my father. I may be born to that person as a son, because I'm thinking of that person all the time. He hates me. How can I take revenge on him? Next life, I am their son. And then in that life, there's love between me and them. So you can see how fickle it is. That hatred and the love are both fickle, right? Probably vice versa also. The person I loved a lot in this lifetime, by some misfortune, by some unfortunate incident, can become the person I hate most in the next lifetime. So both this material love and hate are temporary and fickle. Whereas once the realization of the Atma is present, then it becomes immaterial whether somebody hates me or loves me. It's always seeing from an equal drishti. And this is why, people like the Pandavas, like Yudhishthira, why was Yudhishthira so dear to Krishna? Why was, Yudhishthira dear to so many other people, like the saintly people like Narada? They worship him. Why? Simply because of that purity, he's able to see that Atma Drishti. Why was Yudhishthira able to keep his head very cool when Draupadi was so badly insulted, right? I mean, if you ask these questions, you go into that thing that only that person who is having that realization can actually exhibit these properties. He's able to see things from a completely different plane altogether. And for him, things get resolved. See, at the end of the whole thing, even materially, who emerged victorious? It is Yudhishthira, right? At the end of that Draupadi incident, who emerged victorious? It's Draupadi. It's Duryodhana and Dushasana who got insulted, not Draupadi. So when the spiritual vision is present, the whole thing becomes different. The whole perception is different. The outcomes are different. The value systems are different. The ethics is different. The morality itself is different. And the Gita is taking us towards that. It's actually introducing us to that whole tattva. Yeah, sure. Please. Yes.
What we can say in the spiritual world is there is no supervision between the manager and the owner. So there would not be any agency cost to the max, right? But there will be zero agency cost and there will be utility function for innovation. So as sir said, if there is a person who is unable to eat food or unable to sleep on a sofa, I would innovate. How can I give it to him? Because there is a sense of struggle.
Actually, what I understood was different. That if everyone becomes a manager, because you are seeing what is going on.
Exactly. There is no supervisor in that sense. I agree with you that if everyone becomes a manager, there is no principal or agent differentiation. Everybody is a principal.
System economics, you have individual agents, and then you have entrepreneur who arranges the work to maximize the utility of all of them together as a firm. But in this case, you would not need that manager because each of them, that work has been distributed.
There will be no cost, supervision, bonding cost. Those will not monitoring.
So I think the agency cost trust becomes a package. The trust or not in the body also.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we can go on discussing that. For the benefit of those online who could not hear what happened, there are two doctoral scholars here, both scholarly scholars. And they had a quick discussion on the utility function and so on, which is relevant to their research. Okay, because it took off from where we left here. Those who are online, do you have any questions?
So nothing from my side.
Okay.
There was a mention of satya and definition. Could you reiterate that?
There was a mention of
Satya and definition.
Sat. Yeah. Yeah. In the second chapter of Gita, Sri Bhagavan distinguishes between the two words Sat and Asat. He says the word Sat is applicable for that which is eternal. And the word Asat is applicable for that which has no eternal existence or that which is temporary. Okay, so he says, Na sato vidyate bhavaha, na asataha vidyate bhavaha. Bhava means existence. That which is said to be Asat, the word Asat, the terminology, is that which has no existence actually. Okay, for example, this matter. Okay. Now, for us, it has existence, right? We say it exists here, right? But actually, in his perspective, it doesn't really have existence. It has existence only for some time, which is as good as non-existent. Similarly, Na bhavo vidyate satah. That which is sat has no abhav. It doesn't become non-existent. That which is asat never has any existence, and that which is sat never has any non-existence, he says. So he defines these terms sat and asat like that. His core Vedantic principle. Sat, asat, nitya, anitya, and so on. You want the fan turned towards yourself, or you're okay with it like this?
Anything that can be defined is categorized.
Hmm.
If you want to say that.
Not that it has no definition. Definitions are always there. It's about existence. Whatever we put into. No. That specifically means that which is always existing, that which has no non-existence, that which has neither creation nor destruction. जिसका सृष्टि भी नहीं है, जिसका नाश भी नहीं. Limitless. Definition, yes. So when we say definition, what do you mean by the word definition? Okay, I get your question. Merely by definition can we experience it? No. Merely by explicit definition, it is something that is tacit. So to really understand what is Sat, our words alone won't give us the full understanding of Sat. That's what you're asking, right? You're correct. That's my understanding too. That Sat is best understood when we realize it. So it's experiential, it's phenomenological. You have to experience it to really understand it. It's as simple as the analogy of, say, a tasty sweet. Okay, gulab jamun or Mysore pak. Somebody comes and tells you that I had a sweet called Mysore pak, or I had something kaju katli. And then you say, is it sweeter than the other sweet I'm talking about? He said, of course. How sweeter? Then he goes on asking you questions to understand that sweetness. Then you realize after some point that you are not able to really communicate. Because whatever you say, he is not able to understand. Then you say, put it in your mouth, then you will know. The simple answer is put the sweet in your mouth, then all your questions are answered, then there's no more question. So it's exactly like that. So the sweetness of the Atma, the sweetness of Sat, or what Sat at all means, regardless of whether it is sweet or not, that has to be understood only by experience. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, the process. Bhakti Yoga is a process to achieve that state. But to understand that state, we cannot understand it merely by reading the Shastra. Merely reading the Shastra only gives us a inspiration to engage in the process to achieve it. Shastra becomes the guide, the manual. Yeah. By a saint also. By a saintly person also. Suppose we don't read the Shastra, but we meet a saintly person who knows the Shastra. Then also that can inspire us. We see some saintly qualities in that person.
Getting it. Engage in this.
Yes. So by reading the Shastra or by talking to a sadhu, a genuine sadhu, who has some realization of this truth, at least some realization, we get inspired. We become aware of a goal. Okay, just like when you're a child, you don't know that there is something called an MBA. You don't know there is something called a PhD, right? So you don't know that all these things exist in this world. But as you grow older, at some point of time, you become aware of those things. Somebody tells you, your friends tell you, or you read something in a newspaper, or somehow you find out. You become aware of it. And when you become aware of it, you may also get additional knowledge about what it can do for you. If I do an MBA, then I will attain these kind of things in life. So hearing all that inspires you to do an MBA, right? Exactly in the same way, when we read the Shastra, we become aware that there is a personality like this. We become aware that I am actually not this body at all. I don't belong to this material world at all. There is a higher reality. There's a higher reality called the Atma. And there is two types of Atma, the Jivatma and Bhagavan, who's also called Paramatma. And there is this kind of love which is pure, absolutely pure. So we become aware of all this by reading Shastra, by reading it properly, right? And we can become aware of this through hearing from a saint also, some saintly person somewhere. Or we can become aware of it by some other way also. Whatever way we become aware of it, it should ultimately inspire us to apply the process of achieving it. Right? And that is Bhakti Yoga. Or that is yoga in general. Bhakti Yoga is the highest form of yoga that the Gita talks about. Gita presents Bhakti Yoga as the highest of all forms of yoga. And we should be inspired to follow it once we read it. Yeah.
Previous slide on happiness, can you distinguish between consciousness and
This one? Yes.
so engagement with that which lacks consciousness? So can you please elaborate more on what?
Yeah. Matter versus spirit. Okay. The best translation for Atma would be a word like spirit or a word like living being. Consciousness. Atma is consciousness, whereas matter is something that doesn't have consciousness. Like this, all the material objects around us, this floor, this light, this camera, this mic, anything. So no consciousness. When we engage with that, or let's say the objects of our pleasure, like tasty food or a beautiful cricket match, the sight of a cricket match. Okay. No doubt it gives us a lot of happiness to watch a cricket match, right? But it is material pleasure. It's coming from the contact of my senses, my sense of sight, for example, with the object of the sense, which is whatever is seen in front of me.
Question was but theoretical between consciousness and matter. So is it not that matter also evolves from consciousness? Because I want to understand, is the Purush different from Prakriti, or Prakriti also evolves from Purush?
Prakriti is an energy of the Purusha. It's one of the Shaktis of the Purusha. It's called as Bahiranga Shakti. What we call Prakriti or the Apara Prakriti. It's also called Apara Prakriti, and Bhagavan distinguishes this with the Para Prakriti, which is the Jivatma, in the 7th chapter.
So essentially, in one form or another, everything has consciousness, even if that is Prakriti. Because then only it will be complete.
When we say that Bhagavan pervades everything, in that sense, Bhagavan has consciousness. Bhagavan is consciousness. And he is conscious of this. But this item by itself has no consciousness. It has no, it doesn't experience any sensations. It has no awareness. See, how do we know that something has consciousness? How do we know, or how do we detect the presence of consciousness? We detect the presence of consciousness when there is sensing involved in it. There are feelings involved in it. That thing which we talk about has got sensation, awareness, feeling, etc., right? And it also manifests in the potential that that thing has. For example, a living being has the potential to grow, to make decisions, to exercise free will, to reproduce. A living being can reproduce, but this lamp cannot reproduce, right? If this lamp has to reproduce, a conscious being has to come and create a duplicate lamp. By itself, it cannot reproduce. So the difference between that which has consciousness and that which has no consciousness can be done in many ways by explaining its properties and so on.
I can only examine my consciousness because as a subject, for me, all other things are objects. So an object cannot be the consciousness, right? So this exercise, I can do it only for myself. So we know that we can only know if some other thing has consciousness by their behavior. So I see people moving around.
Yeah.
So if they do not have any consciousness, they
Yeah.
cannot move around.
Yeah.
But say for plants, so they grow. We know now.
And they reproduce.
Yes, but sir, for example, a yogi, suppose he is in samadhi, he never reproduce, and you may ever never know. Even you talked about the story of Bhagavad-gi, so there was an anthill covering, so you never know that there is consciousness on it. So for
Yeah,
other
you never know. I never know whether it has consciousness or not. How does it matter whether I know it or not? It has consciousness. So that which has consciousness has consciousness. That which has no consciousness has no consciousness, whether I know about it or not.
Even if I am placing myself in the position of a judge and I'm thinking that, okay, I need to know if something is conscious or not, only then I should engage with it. Then also I'm acting with my ego, because then I'm thinking that, okay, I am the judge. There has to be that plain and simple willingness to learn, and being open. That's one of the first things, that if I'm open, I would also try to see everything like I'm seeing it for the first time, and trying to understand and decipher how is it different from the last time I saw it. Has the consciousness changed? And in the process, the only consciousness I'm trying to influence and improve is my own,
Yeah.
isn't it?
consciousness they will improve, because
Yeah. Yeah.
does it even have any qualities? Because if I am the subject and I say consciousness is the subject, so whatever I can see cannot be conscious. It will be an object.
Yeah.
Contextual.
I think it's a good question about observer, the role of the observer in comprehending consciousness, right?
Is it- Purnamidam.
Purnamidam Purnamadaha Purnat Purnamudachyate. No, that's about the eternal consciousness, the cosmic consciousness, Bhagavan, the Paramatma, that he is complete. And from the complete, whatever comes out is also complete. Just because the complete comes out from another complete, it doesn't mean it is less complete, nor does the original complete reduce in size. Dunish. There it's talking about only the consciousness. It's not talking about Bahiranga Shakti. Purnat Purna Mudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Avashishyate. When a Purna, when for example, when the Jivatma is said to be a part of Bhagavan, right? And Jivatma is said to be a separated part of Bhagavan. Jivatma is a part of Bhagavan, is one with Bhagavan. At the same time, it has a separation from Bhagavan. So, or you can think Bhagavan himself has got multiple forms. He takes separate, duplicates of himself. He exists in multiple forms in multiple places, and each of them is complete in itself. So this shloka can be understood in multiple ways. It's all pertaining to the Atma, to consciousness. So when conscious, not matter. No, not matter, not matter. So matter is a secondary, it's an inferior energy. It's apara prakriti. Bhagavan himself is saying, it comes from him. Yes. Yeah. So everything is a part of Bhagavan. There's nothing that is not Bhagavan. So Prakriti also is Bhagavan, but it's a form of Bhagavan that has no consciousness of its own. Yeah, because Bhagavan says that. It doesn't have the same properties as the Atma has. That's why he distinguishes between Atma and Deha. No? The first 20 shlokas of Bhagavad-gita, and in many other places later also. He talks about the difference between the two types of Prakriti.
Body is made up of Atma. When we die, Atma just changes shape and goes somewhere else. So,
see, this is speculation. No, see, you are now creating a theory of your own. From the Shastra, how is it described? That's how we understand it, right? The Atma is described in some particular manner. The body is described in some particular manner. So we understand it that way. Distinct.
Yes.
Atma is distinct from matter. It's always distinct from matter. Matter is not made of Atma. Matter is secondary from Atma. It comes from Atma. Yes. Atma is the basis for matter. From Bhagavan. Because he says everything comes from me. Right? Aham sarvasya prabhava. No, so 5 gross. That is the most gross form of matter. Even subtle elements like mind is also matter. Not only the 5 gross elements, but the subtle elements like mana, buddhi, ahankara. And they in turn come. Yeah, in English, we use the word gross and subtle in this manner. By subtle, we mean not that.
Vivek, man, sharir,
Yeah. In terms of different levels of subtlety. Different levels of subtlety. Yeah. Yeah. More gross to more subtle. It's a spectrum. Yes, that's correct. Yes. And in the most subtle form of matter, it's called prakriti or pradhana. It's by the words prakriti or pradhana. That's the most subtle form of prakriti. That's used by that word prakriti. The word prakriti or pradhan is used for that. It is extremely subtle. Right? And that comes from Bhagavan. That prakriti comes from it's his creation. Vishnu's creation. He creates that. And he creates that without consciousness. The moment it has a creation, it means it's not the Atma, because the Atma has no creation. The Atma is not created by Bhagavan. The Jivatma also is not created by Bhagavan. You follow? Only the body is something that is created and that which is destroyed. What we will do is we will take this after the class, because now it's 8 o'clock and some people have to leave also. Close the class and then we will continue. Okay? I'll just chant the Shanti mantra, the Antya Mangalam, and then we will close. Om Swasti Prajabhyah Paripalayantām Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahishaha Gobhramanebhyo Shubhamastu Nityam Lokas Samastas Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Tad Vishno Paramam Padagum Sada Pashyanti Surayah Divi Vachakshuratatam Tad Vipraso Vipanyavo Jagruvagum Sassamindhate Vishnor Yat Paramam Padam Paryaptya Anantarayaya Sarvastamoti Uttamamaharbhavati Sarvasyaptyai Sarvasya Jityai Sarvameva Tena Apnoti Sarvam Jayati. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. That's it.